Who are true Christians? I do not look at other people at my church, at restaurants. When we first started going to church, we were going to a different church than we are now. And my son, who was 4 or 5 at that stage in our life, would notice people in restaurants, bowing their heads and praying, and he'd go, "Mom, those people are Christians." And I would say, "Son, just because they look like it doesn't mean they are. Just because they're bowing their heads before they eat." We're in the South. That's traditional for a lot of people. And you can't tell by looking at most people that whether they are a true believer or they're just a church goer. And a lot of church goers think they're Christians. I like the saying, sitting in your garage makes you no more a car than sitting at church makes you a Christian. And a lot of people here in the South think they're Christians because they sit in church every Sunday. Their parents and maybe even their grandparents go to the same church or went there, before they passed away. I don't bother with trying to figure out who are true Christians and who aren't true Christians. If they come to me professing that they're a Christian, I treat them accordingly. And actually, I hold them to a higher standard than I do someone who professes not to be a Christian. Or if they're new in the faith, I give them a little bit more grace and mercy. But I am shocked by the Christians. When I was not a Christian, I went to church as a child. I was on a bus kid, and those in the South know what I'm talking about. In other words, my parents stayed home. They didn't have anything to do with the church. I rode the bus that the local Baptist church sent out and picked up the kids and took them in for their ministry. I was one of those kids, but I went on my own. No one else in my family went, and I was studious. I've always loved to read. I was usually the teacher's pet. Teachers loved me because I loved to learn. I wanted to learn. I still have that thirst and craving to learn, all sorts of stuff, and I love to read. So it amazed me when I grew older that there were Christians that went to church their entire lives down here and never read the entire Bible. They didn't know when I talked about Mephibosheth. Who was he? When I talk about certain verses in the Bible and they're going, "Where is that?" They never heard it before. Because a lot of churches, and I'm sorry, many denominations are guilty of going over the same verses over and over and over and over. They don't teach the entire Bible. What's the point if, we're just going to stay in the Gospels, which is good. I mean, that's enough to get your salvation. But the entire thing to me is a love letter from God. All of it. Even there's some harsh things. When Mel Gibson did The Passion, and people are like, "You made an R-rated movie, and it's supposed to be Christian. It's about Jesus Christ." And he said the Bible is R-rated. He's right. In some areas, I think it's X-rated. The Song of Solomon, they wouldn't let the boys or children read that. They wouldn't let them be part of any teaching in the Song of Solomon until they were 30, or if the woman was married, because it's for that era is probably what they would have considered porn. And I believe if someone is a Christian, that they would have a thirst, a desire to know more about God, and this is our best source. And people that go off on their own and I'm just going to worship God in nature have put themselves at risk to just end up with all sorts of wacky stuff. Some of it may be good. I'm not saying it won't. It's all bad, but it gets scary to me when people go off like that. And coming back to the Bible, I believe There's a lot of harsh things in the Bible that is not God's will. That God didn't, God, there's certain things that people throw up, why did God want them all wiped out, and how could God, the flood and killed all those people, and there's all sorts of stuff that we can go into more detail. But Christianity, the people that are truly Christians, there's some simple tests. Do they know the Bible? And just knowing the Bible doesn't make them a Christian, though. But I think Christians, as a general rule, want to learn the Bible, want to, at least the New Testament. They also, how can you tell a Christian? If they love one another. When Christians especially speak bad about other Christians, even if, I may not believe so-and-so is a Christian, but that doesn't give me license to talk bad about them. Okay? When I start talking bad about somebody, versus, I can sit there and tell you that someone did something bad to me, and I'll tell you the details of it, and most of the time I'm not going to tell you who that person was, because I'm just talking about the incident, not the person. Because I'm very leery about speaking bad, because that's the devil's job. I'm not going to take his job. I'm not going to help him talk bad about the brethren. Okay, so when you see a Christian, someone who professes to be a Christian, attacking another Christian, they can be disagreeing on topics, but when they're personally attacking that person, I have to wonder about their Christianity. How can you be? You're doing the devil's work, attacking a brethren. You should be loving on each other. I disagree with someone, so I'm going to pray for them and pray that God softens my heart toward them because it's made me angry. There's things like that we should be looking for. Jesus said that his two simple things was to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Well, everyone's my neighbor. God, why did you make it that hard? Why didn't you just tell me the people in my church that I should just love them like I love myself? Because I really like most of them. Notice most of them. Even I have problems with some of them. There's personality conflicts. I am not perfect. I'm working on it. I look for my flaw in the relationship, not just them. Why did they, do that to me, or say that to me, or say that about me? What did I do to cause it? I tend to go back into that more so than, and sometimes I didn't do anything. Sometimes it is that other person, and it's like, well, I'm sorry. It's just the way that is. But you have to understand that the majority, the Bible says that many Christians are going to go to heaven, and Jesus is going to say, I knew you not. They're going to say, oh, we cast out demons in your name. We healed people and brought back the dead in your name. And Jesus will say, I knew you not, depart from me. I don't want to hear that. I'm more concerned about when I get up there, I want to hear Jesus say, you are a good and faithful servant. You were a steward. You were a good steward of what I gave you. That's what I'm working on, more so than what other people, are they true Christians or not. And I think a lot of people, the biggest blasphemy is saying I'm a Christian and doing something bad. Turning around after I tell you I'm a Christian and go, oh, let me tell you what your neighbor did, and I saw her running around with this other guy, and all. It's like, wait a minute, you just said you're a Christian, you're gossiping? You're slandering this person? That is blasphemy. Even though I didn't say GD, I didn't say a cuss word, I didn't use any profanity. I blasphemed Christ by misrepresenting him. When we say Christian, that means little Christian or Christ-like. Literally, that's what Christian means. And when I sit there, when I'm telling you I'm a Christian, and then I make a video that's hate-filled, you have to wonder, how much of a Christian am I? Probably not much, if any, doing that. So Christianity and God is about love. I am not by nature a loving person. I grew up in a household that hardly ever hugged. We didn't hug each other. Most expressions of love were not there in my background. But that's not the family I wanted. I hug my kids a lot. I hug my 19-year-old son. I try to do that on a daily basis. I hold my grandsons often. I have them sit in my lap and try to read to them or do something with them. Things like that. And expressions of love to people outside my family was not easy for me. And God's had to deal with me. And I think I've grown in the past year alone. Just some things that's happened that God's called me to do. And I finally obeyed. I'm reluctant in my obedience. I'm just as bad as when I tell my son to do a chore and he puts it off to the last minute. And maybe even beyond that. And I threaten to pull the plug on his computer, and then he finally does it. I'm just as bad when I know that certain things that God has called me to do. So I know that my perfection is a long way off, but people need to understand that the majority of people who call themselves Christians are not Christians. If the rapture happens like in the Left Behind series, I think a lot of people that's been church going and think they're Christians are going to be really surprised when they're left behind, because there's no love in them. Yeah, I talked about the King Jamers, which I am one, but they gave that Bible a very bad name by being the Bible thumpers and hate-filled. They're hate-filled. We can hate the sin without hating people, without being hateful. I don't like being around someone who's smoking. Okay? It doesn't mean I don't like the smoker. I know people who smoke, and I feel bad for them that they do that. And I'm not going to be sitting around them when they smoke, but I'm not going to sit there and preach at them either. They know. They're adults. They know. I don't need to go into that. And I think Christianity, I have that same kind of mentality about how I approach. Some people that act like they're Christians, they say that they're Christians, they're living very ungodly, unchristlike lives. And for the most part, I'm not going to say anything unless the Lord leads me to. Or, they open the door and say something to me and I go, wait a minute. I think you got that a little backwards. And I've had to do that recently, and I felt guilty about doing it when I had to tell her that she was not listening. And it's up to her at that point. She can continue on with her pattern, which she probably will. And she can maybe unlike me on Facebook. She may. I don't know. I hadn't checked. She may have already. So, whatever. But please understand, Christianity is not about going to church. It's not just, there's many people that know the Bible that are not Christians. There's many people who go to church that are not Christians. And the way they approach you, if you're not a Christian, and the way they approach you tells me a lot. Because in the Bible, Jesus it was those that professed a religiosity that he bashed. The unbelievers, he was their friend. He was kind to them. He was understanding. So how these people think it's okay to be mean to a non-believer or to someone who's seeking, and they kowtow to these figureheads in religion. Anyway, that's another topic, I think. But to me, true Christianity is about love. In a nutshell. Simple. How they show love to you, to others, to their family members. I know a young man who's very disrespectful to his mother. And he's trying to raise money to go on a missionary trip. I could not help him. I wouldn't help him, because how can I support someone in the mission field who treats his mother awfully? And she could be the worst person on the planet. That's still his mother. He needs to honor her as best as he can while not hurting himself. No, he was just being a jerk. I can't support that. And I'm sitting there going, and these are people we're sending out on the mission field? Do they not have an idea? Has none of his friends gotten a clue and said something to him about, you're breaking a commandment. You need to honor your mother. So, anyway. I hope that rambling made sense. Thanks for watching.